The people I represent, and many of us represent, are going hungry. Mr. Speaker, they cannot afford to keep healthy food on their family tables. Elders and kids have no food in this country, Canada. And I fundamentally believe that Canadians are simply not okay with that fact. I want to begin by giving you a quick snapshot of what the people in my own riding of Churchill are dealing with on any given day. John Robert Throassie of Tadoule Lake said, quote, "You go to the Northern store with $200 and you'll be lucky if you get 1 week of supplies." Wow. Mina Duck from Tadoule Lake shared with me that a 4-liter jug of milk is $15. Darryl Beardy from York Landing, which has been excluded from Nutrition North, says a 4-liter jug of milk is $12. Julianne Saunders reported to me that at one time strawberries in the Northern store in York Landing were almost $13 and ground beef $14. Mr. Speaker, this has been a historic week for Canada. Our Truth and Reconciliation Commission has come to a close and has given us all a clear mandate. Justice Murray Sinclair said it best when he said, "Reconciliation is not an Aboriginal problem. It is a Canadian problem, and it involves all of us." He spoke directly to the leaders in Canada and the government and asked us to take up the spirit and actions of reconciliation in all that we do. The Commission has given us a roadmap. 94 recommendations that clearly define what this government's role should be in making our broken country whole again. And for our part, New Democrats are fully committed to following these recommendations. I want to address the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations in the context of Nutrition North, because when Indigenous peoples are going hungry in the North and the government does not take action to address it, there can be no reconciliation. The TRC report said, and I quote, "We believe that in order to redress the legacy of residential schools and to move towards more respectful and healthy relationships, the Government of Canada, in meaningful consultation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities, must recognize and address the broader context of the child welfare crisis. This includes matters of child poverty, housing, water, sanitation, food security, family violence, addictions, and educational inequities," end quote. And more succinctly, the formidable Indigenous performer, musician, Tanya Tagak tweeted on Tuesday, quote, "#MyReconciliation includes the ending of the food crisis in Nunavut. Subsidize the shipping costs," end quote. We have heard it from Indigenous leaders. We have heard it from this government's own Auditor General, and I personally hear it constantly on the ground in the communities that I have the honor of representing. Northerners cannot access affordable, healthy food where they are. People are going hungry. People are getting sick. The need is urgent, and we cannot wait any longer for action. And I want to acknowledge the work of Lisi Papatsi, the creator of Feeding My Family Facebook page, who's known as a hero in many communities that I represent, who said, "The Inuit never protested. Traditionally, for the Inuit to survive, everybody had to get along, and we didn't create friction. But if we don't start saying something about high costs, then people will think it's okay. Our children are going hungry," end quote. Mr. Speaker, my riding in Northern Manitoba includes 14 communities who are eligible for Nutrition North: Bloodvein, Barons River, God's Lake Narrows, God's River, Garden Hill, Lac Brochet, Little Grand Rapids, Poplar River, Oxford House, Red Sucker Lake, Shamattawa, St. Teresa Point, Wasagamak, and Pungasi. In response to numerous complaints about the effectivity of Nutrition North from my own constituents, I, alongside 6 of my colleagues, wrote a letter to the Auditor General asking for a wide-ranging financial and operational audit of the program. The Auditor General agreed, and in 2014, a damning report was released that found huge gaps and a general lack of accountability in the management of the program. No wonder people in the communities that I represent are calling out for action. They know that the program is not working. I also acknowledge communities like Churchill and Puckatawagan that, yes, have a railway, are still remote, and people cannot afford healthy foods to feed their families. I've been advocating for the program to be fixed, and for some time, my requests have been met by an infuriating lack of action on the part of this minister and his staff, who admit freely to me that the problems and inequities that exist within the program are there, but they are in no hurry whatsoever to fix them. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, people are going hungry in our north. Elders cannot afford food. Parents cannot afford to buy healthy food for their children. And if you're a parent who can't afford food for your kids, you can't wait for the federal government to choose to prioritize the issue. You need it fixed now. My colleagues and I are brought here today by the serious health needs of the people we represent. What could be more fundamental than addressing third world food shortages? One of the worst issues we are facing in the north is that some communities, who by all accounts are the most northern and most in need of food, have faced the greatest levels of food insecurity, are excluded entirely from Nutrition North. No credible reason, Mr. Speaker. There are Indigenous communities in my riding that need urgently to be included in the program, because even a program that isn't working as it should is better than no program at all. The communities are York Landing, Brochet, and Tadoule Lake, which is the furthest north First Nation in Northern Manitoba. They must be included immediately in the program. We also recognize that there are other communities, as I mentioned, that need to be considered and included. Time is up for this government. What we are saying today is that the government has to step up and immediately contribute the funds necessary to include these excluded communities. It's an easy and straightforward step in the right direction. Children are going hungry. We've crunched preliminary numbers, and approximately $7.5 million would be needed to include the excluded communities. Mr. Speaker, we can do this today, while simultaneously committing this House to look critically at the Nutrition North program from the ground up and do the work necessary to make food security a reality for Northerners. We need to go back to the table and fix this broken program. I want to read into the record the words of one of my constituents, Sheila Marie Beardy from Puckatawagan, who said, "I live in an isolated First Nation, Puckatawagan, Manitoba, where the only means of travel in the summer is by plane or by train twice a week. And in the winter, we have a winter road for 3 months. The high cost of living is ridiculous. We only have one store, the Northern store. Many of our community members struggle due to the high cost of living in our community." Mr. Speaker, I think of also the Northerners who are making a difference every single day to try and establish food security, food sovereignty in their communities. I think of the work that's being done currently in Garden Hill by Darcy Wood and Sean Loney, working with local young people in Garden Hill to be able to establish community gardens. I think of the work of Diane Delaron-Colombe and Waboden, who for years has been working to establish greenhouses and raise chickens on a small scale in communities in our north. I think of the late Oscar Laughlin and leaders in our provincial government who fought to establish some ability to support food security in our north. But, Mr. Speaker, the role here that we need to see is one played by the federal government. We in the NDP understand that food security for Northern Indigenous peoples means more than just Nutrition North. We need to address the food crisis in the North and work together for sustainable Indigenous and Northern-led solutions. In conclusion, I stand in this House to ask this government to stop taking the North for granted. Stop using Northerners for photo ops. I ask them to respect the North and stand with Northerners to put an end to the food insecurity they and we face. Thank you.